What's going on, everyone? Toronto Hoop Talk checking in after the Raptors beat the Sixers by 20 in their first Summer League game this year. I'm going to talk about the outcome of the game in the context of the players that I identified in my preview as the ones I'm going to be keeping an eye on. So we're going to start with Delano Banton, 21 points total. I think he had 18 of them in the second half. Definitely a tale of two halves for him from a performance standpoint. Not the greatest first half. Pretty solid second half. Like I mentioned in my preview, the fact that he scored 21 points and he shouldered a big scoring load, it's not really something I'm too concerned with, or like I don't care that much because he's not going to have that kind of a big role on a Raptors team during the season. What I was more concerned with was shooting. And to be fair, Delano Banton made a couple threes. He had back-to-back threes in the third quarter, contested threes, tough shots. I really like what I saw in that sequence and just generally his second half at large. My other main takeaway with Delano Banton is that his handle is what's stopping him from, I think, getting to that next level. Delano Banton's really effective when he's aggressive, he's going towards the basket, getting easy looks at the rim, collapsing the defense, using his passing ability and his court vision to set players up in those moments when he collapses the defense, but it's not something he can consistently do because he doesn't have the dribble. He loses control of the ball pretty often. You saw a few turnovers. You saw a lot in the first half. That's something that I think he needs to work on to get to that next level. I really think his game will get unlocked and just open up generally if he could just get to the basket more. On to Christian Koloko. Now, I was really happy with his debut. I think his debut kind of got mixed reviews in general, but honestly, offensively, I think he showed that he's a threat around the rim, which we knew, but we saw it. The few times we saw him take jump shots and shoot free throws, the form looked good, and you already see that there's quite a bit of upside with his jumper. So offensively, I'm happy. He didn't constantly dominate. He didn't score a ton of points, but he came in, he set screens, he looked really good as a roll man. And yeah, I feel very good about how his offensive game looked as a first showing for the kind of player he is. Now, defensively is something that, again, mixed reviews because he had a lot of fouls, but he also did get a lot of blocks and he got his hand on the ball a lot. Nick Nurse mentioned after the game that he told Koloko to be aggressive and swing at everything. So that adds context to the fact that he picked up a lot of fouls because there was a deliberate instruction for him to be a little over-aggressive in that manner. I pointed out in my preview that I was going to keep an eye on how he plays defensively in screen situations from a schematic perspective. Now, what I saw is I didn't see a ton of switching on the perimeter, but I saw a lot of drop coverage with Koloko. And I'll say I thought he looked really good as a drop defender. I thought he looked really comfortable in drop coverage, accounting for the two offensive players he's responsible for in those moments. He regularly affected shots. He blocked shots. The Sixers never got anything easy in these moments. I imagine when he does start playing for the Raptors, this is something he's going to bring to the table that we don't have any of on the roster as of now, and I think it's exciting to think about what our defensive potential looks like when he gets comfortable doing this at an NBA level. On to David Johnson. Now, when I heard that Champagnie was out for the game today, I assumed David Johnson was going to get the starting spot, but surprisingly he didn't. As a player coming off the bench, he didn't have a massive role in what was going on today. Definitely a difficult game to look at and try to make any real judgments on David Johnson. Like, I don't think he stood out much. I didn't see a whole lot that happened that was notable. I think the things that did stand out for me, there was honestly more negative than good. So yeah, I would say as a whole, tough game for David Johnson. Hopefully he can bounce back the next game and we can get a better look at what kind of player he is. Because again, what I mentioned in the preview was I don't know much about this guy. I want to get a feel for his game. And I just watched the game where he played in, and I still don't think I get his game. As I mentioned earlier, Justin Champagnie was declared out for the game, and he was a player that I had identified as somebody I was going to watch for. So it sucks that he hurt his hand before the game, and hopefully we can get a look at him before Summer League ends. But he had some kind of cast or just molding thing on his hand courtside today, so I don't know. Hopefully we can get a look at him, but yeah, it sucked to not see him out there today against his twin. On to DJ Wilson. Now, DJ Wilson started, and he got quite a bit of minutes. I don't think he had the greatest game. He took a little bit more shots from the perimeter than I would have expected, but he didn't shoot those shots particularly well. He had some moments in terms of, like, hustle plays and defensive plays, but, like, not enough to justify for the fact that the rest of his game is fairly limited and he doesn't impact the game in a lot of different ways. It wasn't the greatest showing for DJ Wilson, a guy who we saw or we know he signed a contract. He's one of the few players on this team that has signed a contract, but I don't think he particularly stood out as one of the best players on this team. As I mentioned in the preview, I wanted to see hustle and impact plays, and there were some, but as I mentioned earlier, there weren't enough to justify the limitations in his game. So hopefully we see more in the next game. And hopefully his perimeter shots fall if he's going to take as many as I saw him take. On to Ron Harper Jr. Ron Harper Jr. got the start. He got a lot of minutes. He didn't have the most impactful game. I can't say he stood out for a whole ton of a lot, but he did make a contested three, and I did point out in the preview that he has a very good shooting record from three in college. So it was nice to see him make the contested three. Hopefully we get to see a little bit more from him in the next game, but he played a lot of minutes. I can't say I saw much negative from him either. He had a moment where he got a steal, I think, at the end of the first, and he went to throw up a lob to Koloko right before the buzzer ended, but the pass got intercepted. So, whatever. Like I didn't see anything from Ron Harper Jr. that makes me feel bad at all. But again, I just want to see more in the next game. So definitely excited to see the next game from Ron Harper Jr. and hopefully he does a little bit more that allows us to see what his game is going to look like. And last but not least, Armoni Brooks. Man, oh man, that was a shooting performance. Now, if you look at the box score, you'll see he shot a high volume of threes and he shot them at a fairly high rate. But if all you saw is the box score, you missed that he hit some threes that they just hit different when he knocked those shots down. Like, he shot some deep threes, shot some contested threes. He was out there shooting with confidence. The second he caught the ball, that thing was going up. It was a shooting display from Armoni Brooks today. I mentioned in the preview that, like, I know he's a good three-point shooter because he has that track record, and that's something that is going to have to be a part of his game because he's a three-point specialist. So I wasn't necessarily too hung up on seeing his three-point shot. What I wanted to see was other parts of his game, and to be fair, he had a couple drives to the basket that looked good. He had one in transition that had the whole bench, the whole Raptors bench area excited. It was good to see. It was good to see him play with confidence. It was good to see him play with authority. He honestly looked like our best player. From a defensive standpoint, he was playing hard. Obviously, he's a smaller player, so he doesn't get to have the impact that some of our bigger players have, but he was hustling. He was getting back on defense. He was doing everything you would want for him to do defensively. So I was happy to see that as well. Yeah, hopefully he just sustains what he started today, and honestly, things look really good for him for the training camp competition if these are the kind of performances he's going to put in. He looked like our best player today. Now, those are the guys that I brought up in my preview that I was familiar with, but a guy that I didn't know anything about before today was Jeff Dayton Jr., who got the start for Justin Champagnie, and he looked really solid. He ran the game well as a point guard. He hit some shots. He hit a tough fadeaway from the mid-range on like the right side of the court in the first quarter that just looked nice. He got buckets in the first quarter. And yeah, it had a fairly steady game after that. So this is a guy I'll be keeping an eye on. Maybe he gets a training camp opportunity, but yeah, he stood out. And he's not somebody that you necessarily think about as like a Raptors mold kind of a player. He's 6'3", he's fairly light. I couldn't find his wingspan, so who knows how long his arms are. But yeah, had a very good game. He looked so composed running the offense. And yeah, I want to see more of Jeff Dayton Jr. If I missed anything today or there's any major takeaways you guys made that I didn't bring up today, make sure you leave it in the comments. I had a blast watching the game today. I was on Twitter live tweeting the game. It was a great time. Make sure you guys check me out on Twitter at TorontoHoopTalk. If you guys want more updates, you guys want to know when videos drop, I'll be live tweeting throughout the next game, so make sure you guys check it out. I'll see you guys for the next game. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave your thoughts in the comments, and find me on all socials at TorontoHoopTalk.